Now, I want to say something that I said in one of my previous videos. In that video, I said of where the games were released at different platforms, and here was the list that I mentioned.
Vimeo got so popular that it not only released to iOS, but it spread to Android platforms, PlayStation platforms, and even to Windows Phone.
Well, it turns out that there is another version of the game that I have yet to talk about, and it wasn't considered a console like the PlayStation Vita, but it was in fact the MacBook. Let me explain. Chillingo was also into the Mac gaming industry as it was part of Apple, and that's what Chillingo mainly did, released their platforms to iOS. Mac was sort of a similar iOS, but not quite, and so a Mac version of the game was released in December 2011. This makes it the very first version of the game other than the iPhone that Vimeo was first released to. How I got it was that I suddenly realized that there was a link that someone had actually saved this version of the game. I checked to see for myself and downloaded it, and strangely, it actually worked! The macOS version of the game was playable. Though this was only the case on my MacBook Catalina and not the case for macOS Sierra and onwards. But now that I actually have it, let's take a look and see what the gameplay looks like. Okay, so this release is the only version of the game that it actually makes sense for it to be released to a different platform. Not a lot of people had iPhones, some only had computers, but there was a version of this game made for the MacBook. Instead of using your fingers, you use the mouse to operate objects. It does feel a little bit clunky at first, but you'll get used to it. I could honestly imagine a Wii version of this game existing. You using the A button and the Wii motion sensors just to play the game would be hilarious to me. But it's a little bit exactly the same as playing the normal older version of the game around 2011. Although, need I remind you that the oil's counterparts are actually doubled for some reason. Here, it says 400 particles of oil when it was previously 200. In total, there are about 300 particles of oil in the normal version, but yet it's doubled to 600 for some reason. Am I a little bit strange that this is the only release that actually does this? Well, either way, at least anti-gravity mode is free. This is actually the very first release of the game where anti-gravity mode is free instead of being an extra purchase. It makes sense. On devices where they're not popularly received, you get it without needing an extra purchase. But on devices that have been highly used, it requires an extra purchase of $1. Here, it's just a star requirement, requiring you to get about 175 out of the 225 stars for collection of the entire game. And at least because it's the old version of the game, it thankfully has the same physics and the exact same looks. Although the lift in level 5-3 is removed. Probably because it wasn't useful before. Probably something to troll people into thinking when it's good, when it's not. Strangely, it uses higher quality versions of the sound and music. And yes, I can actually beat the level with 3 stars. Yep, that's proof. Some of the levels are harder in their original way. Anti-gravity level 5-3 is a good example, but I was still able to beat it. And the same thing goes to level 1 as well. So it seems that the Mac version is another faithful adaptation to the original iPhone version. However, it doesn't free the fact that it has differences in it. And one obvious one is that they removed the bonus levels, which the developer would probably say the fact that they were probably only made for the 1.0 release when chapters 4 and 5 weren't added yet, and they were clearly made for that big of a difficulty. But when anti-gravity was introduced and more chapters were added in, they sort of became less of a reason for them to exist. And starting with the Mac version, this is the first game to have them be completely axed. Although they are still present in the Mac's game files, so they were probably going to be added until he realized they were useless. Either way, I probably wished he would have kept them in. But that's all for the Mac version of the game, so another title for that set of the game. See you in the next video. Goodbye.